Mojo journalism is basically any attempt, this is very, very broad, it includes so much, for humans to express what is in their mojo in some way that other humans can understand. They can understand their experience. So this basically means the proliferation of the entire meme languages that humans have ever had in its history and the ongoing memes of it. So it's very, very important. So Mojo journalism is basically the creation of memes, which comes from Mojo and so forth, social alchemy. So Mojo journalism is the active, that's the key, is the active awareness that that's happening. That has been happening, that's what journalism has been doing, and realize what all humans have been doing when they communicate at all with one another. But Mojo journalism is the awareness that Mojo is generating everything, and that's the connection, and that's what we have to hold on to, and that's what memes done right would be like. There's two reasons. One I highlighted already, which is what's coming out needs to be taken into hand and understood what is happening. So that's kind of a group effort, but then on an individual effort is the understanding that since that is what's happening, on your own end, only your ability to understand what's happening, both in a receiving end and in a going out end, that is the upper limit of communication. Like we often say with spirit forming, that how well you use the elevator of enlightenment is the maximum you're going to be at that. Just like in more technical terms, synomny is the max your brain can do. Your ability to understand the mojo and spirit forms and everything else that implies, that's informing on the memes you're receiving. That's the most you can understand anything, both on what they're doing and what you're putting out, because that's the process. So it's kind of like being an editor. How good are you at the written word? Your command of language is how good you are going to be at understanding stories and communicating them. It affects popular principles in that this does present a stance by implication, for example, a political or philosophical position, which is that information is good, including mojo information, including what other people's mojo is. For example, there are going to be those people who think that, oh, you shouldn't be telling people what people's mojo are and this and that, maybe it's invasion of privacy or something. No, it's not. We're going to call the reporter standard on that one. It's a public event. That's our position on that. Just like a birth or a death or a crime or a breaking of a world record, what Najee, Bob, the politician's eyes were doing on Tuesday during the news conference, relevant. That's a relevant news story. That's our position. So we take it should be transparent what's going on, and we should have free access to that information. That's our position on that. So obviously very freedom of speech oriented. We do a very simple, very crude, very quick run through history, explaining how humans have always been doing that, basically communicating each other through mojo and through how it can affect things, and how that built to be where we are now, and how humans have used the most effective and impactful and important conduits they had. Whatever humans developed in order to communicate mojo, they do. So so Mojo journalism right now is giving a name and making it more in depth because of mojo, but it's simply making aware a process that humans have had a just burning desire to do from the beginning of us. So that's what we're doing. We're kind of starting from the beginning of us. Okay, so in the simplest of terms, you can see that, say in a forensic way, the way we evolved with the cognitive configurations and the cues we give off, etc., etc. Why? It's because they serve a communication purpose for one another. So, as I've mentioned in many posts, my G face makes many, many expressions. I don't actually have to give them words. My face knows how to tell a story. It knows how to do this before I learn English. Kids who don't know how to speak at all can act out. They can pretend to be in pain. A child can pretend to be in pain when they're like 2 years old. I mean, actually, it's a very early trick for a child to learn, to pretend to be doing it. For example, they learn, if I cry out for real, I get food. I want food now. I think I'm hungry. well, maybe not hungry enough to like involuntarily yell out, but hungry enough to voluntarily yell and see if mommy won't bring me some porridge. Does that make sense? So that right there, you're talking about something that, in a beautiful way, is right past the evolution of humans into an advanced primate form. You see this in the other primates. So at this point right here, this is not whiffed or anything. You can actually see this in the animal kingdom with, chimpanzees and any of the pack-like primate animals. They communicate and they express what they're doing, and so the other ones of their collective can get in on this. Two things that come up in particular. The use of past tense and future tense. Present tense actually as well as part of Mojo Journalism, but you really see it coming out in past and future tense, which is Bob, the other primate, got eaten by a lizard because he went down the well, went down the watering hole when he shouldn't have gone down there. So you come back and you tell the other people in the tribe this happened. This happens with chimpanzees. So humans have been doing this for a very long time, but they come back from an event and attempt to convey in acting out, drawing in the sand some way, that something just happened. They'll act out Bob, they'll act out Bob getting caught. I mean, so people understand, oh, some bad shit just happened. Now, they're limited because acting out without verbal language obviously has limitations, but the attempt is already there. So, also tool use. When a tool has been used, you'll see other primates who don't have anywhere near our development trying to show another creature like, dude, I totally stuck this in a tree and got something cool out of it. And they're trying to communicate, and a lot of times the other one doesn't get it, you know what I mean, because they don't have our kind of intellect. But it does transfer sometimes, and there's a desire to transfer that knowledge, and the desire sometimes of people watching it to try to figure out what's going on. They want to get it. So Mojo Journalism can actually be like reporting on someone who's not trying to give you the story. Bob's doing something with a little tree stick thing, getting little worms out of the thing. He's doing investigative reporting on the latest production of protein. That's a new development in their tribe. So everything kind of comes out from there, and there's a lot more going on than just that, and we'll get to that in probably the first 2 or 3 right here. But already you see that this is something that all primates do, so we're starting with that. That begins the forensic level that primates, especially the more evolved they get, try to act out things that happened previously, whether it be with people or tools, and also in the future, the idea of pointing. What does that mean? Means let's go over there. That's Mojo Journalism. You don't see a lot of other animals doing that as much. I mean, they do, but obviously the more intelligent, evolved animals do that more, where they express, hey, something just happened, or what would happen if we try to do something. They are communicating, trying to make a better reality. So Mojo Journalism is they're trying to express these things to make it to where they're not just there. They're not just with their fingers in their head walking around on 2 legs. They're actually building something intangible amongst each other. That's the heart and soul of Mojo Journalism. So let's continue from there. I need to spend some time because that's the nugget that everything else is layered on. So there's lots of forensic evidence, for those who feel like going look this stuff up, of humans having a journalistic bond coming from materials that are not native to them, that they share amongst each other. A culture, for example, even like killer whales and such, who know how to kill sharks. Not all killer whales know how to do that. Some do. And those who meet those can learn it. That's Mojo Journalism right there. So it can be lost, but it can also be transferred. So it's very, very valuable, but very, very tricky. So packs, the ability to not only be in a pack, but superior packs. That wins. So you do also see this, especially in the higher primates, socializing, packing up, building crews, rapport, in order to have better success, more strength, more security. And so humans definitely did that as well. So now there's a desire to communicate to someone through, for example, gifts. You give them gifts of food or being nice to them or something, so that they'll be nice to you. They'll be on your team. Mojo Journalism, at its simplest, is humans banding together in perception and discernment for mutual cause. It's very, very important. Then tools, the same thing, is the carrying around of them. So you use a tool once, but then you begin to carry it around. This does two things. One, you become a different kind of person. Mojo Journalism is a lot with have to do with self-identity, self-expression, fashion, everything's coming later. But already, I'm a dude or dudette who doesn't just walk around like this. I got a knife. Or a stick that gets maggots out of trees. Whatever, but I'm special, I'm different. And I wear this, and this makes me different. And other people, they see that, go, hey, what's that? Oh, yeah, right? And he doesn't have to speak at all, or she, to impress, to wow, to get a different reaction than just being 10 fingers ahead and walk around 2 legs. This makes me different. My choice of seeing that tool, my choice of holding on to it, carrying it, passing it on, it's power. Maybe I use it for some people, maybe I don't, maybe I give it to other people, maybe I don't. This creates a dynamic, an intangible but incredibly powerful dynamic, separate than just your innate powers, but the powers made that. The person's mojo decided or helped them learn how to use that tool, or stole that tool for Bob, or all those kinds of things. Hid the tool so no one else could see it. That's a story. Ooh, there's a tool in the tribe, but he's hiding it. Who's getting all this food but not showing? So right then you have like a whole little, soap opera, and there's not even language yet. So I can move a little faster as we go along, but these first are really crucial. As soon as humans got the ability to express themselves in ways outside of functional, they took that opportunity. This is early. These first 3, we're talking like really early human civilization. We're talking pre-civilization, we're talking pre-language, this is like ancient stuff here. So these humans have very little of what you would consider to have any civilizing influence on them. But already, pretty much once they were able to go into a cave and not be immediately killed and had some food, they wanted to express their day. They want to talk about their hunt. Not just that they killed animals, not just that they got food, I mean I guess that's sort of relevant, but they felt a need to show it. And to show the great deal of skill, considering the implements they had at the time. So it was important. And it was cool. That's something important to notice too, is the cave drawings have a tendency, both for hunting and other spiritual things and giving births and different things they show, it's epic. That's key. It shows what's important. That cave space was very crucial. There's a limited amount of space, so this is what we need to do to talk about what we are. And so as soon as humans had that ability, even before they got really to where they could protect themselves better, just having caves, just having a little safe spot, as soon as there was in danger, that's where the brain went. What does it all mean? Who are we? What do we do? How do we want people to know us? What's our legacy? So some of these actually are happening obviously at very similar times and overlapping these earlier stages. So these aren't in direct order, but you're also going to have, as the packs increase, as the caves become more dwellings, there's more of an establishment. You're now actually having like things that resemble communities. They can be carved out of the earth and so forth, very primitive, but they are communities. Who are you in this community? It's very important. Right away, there's people who have more feathers than other people, and then again, this is before writing. We don't know if they actually had language yet. They may have still been grunting at this point, but apparently the desire to distinguish oneself and to say by what kind of things you wear, what kind of bones you collect, various things, I'm a hunter, or I'm a wise person, or I'm this and that. That's very important. Those spirit forms want to come out. They want to say to the other tribe people, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is what I think is important. Have you seen this? Etc., etc. So this is something seen pretty much in all civilizations as very, very early on. We're talking primitive, to where very small, barely out of hunting and gathering, migrating communities. Humans want to tell their story. They want to play a character. So basically they adorn themselves to tell the other people in the game, I'm playing this character like an RPG. Look at my outfit. It's very much like going to conventions. And so humans just have that desire, and it's a good desire. It can be used poorly. For example, you'll notice that a lot of the adornment tend to be heavily focused. Sometimes only hunters or only kings or things like that would get adornment. So that's rather lopsided, as maybe that was something that could force its recognition. It can make other people accept it, so it imposed itself incorrectly because it had tools to do so, military force and so forth. So I'm not saying that all the adornment was correctly chosen, and that those who were adorning themselves were the ones who should have been getting all that Mojo Journalism press time, but that instinct is a noble one. It's a desire to meet with the other humans and express what's going on with you. And whenever humans do that, they are more into it. It's kind of like if you're in any kind of group and the people in the group don't really know you that much, you're less invested. The more you can actually, kind of, if you got people like reading your poetry and things like that, there's a close bond. Mojo journalism is basic thing. Like, look at me, I'm a guy with a feather in his hair, whatever. If a person will say, oh, that's cool, just by nod their head, that builds a rapport at a very, very primitive and intimate level. Okay, so this is another biggie before we start moving fast. This brings in the concept of humans. Again, these things all overlap, but there became also the understanding of generations. So the Mojo journalism took on from expanding in that ambient way we talked about and going to new forms like art and whatever on the walls, into the concept of that going afterwards. Now this had always been there to some degree, but there was an increase in different parts of history when the ability and the interest in having things go on became high, and so items became crafted specifically to last beyond a lifetime. Buildings, holy items for rituals, different things, they're designed out of very hard elements, taking a lot of work for items that oftentimes weren't going to be used at all. They were so ceremonial they had no functional use whatsoever, but apparently they're very, very important to the people. So artifacts, in this context, how I'm using it, it basically means something that has such special significance that it needs to be handed down. It may not be something that our tribe or people naturally think of, but we have realized through our mojo interacting with the world, it's important. And to make sure that it's always there and can be passed on. So this is where you start seeing the real power of it, but also the danger. Because now you have generations imposing their will on generations that are to come. That's the scary part about Mojo journalism and memes, because those who are in charge get to say what the story is, and then those who are born into that bubble are born to that story that may be off. That's key, because Mojo journalism should follow natural law, but people often mess that up. So there's a great responsibility when you realize that Mojo journalism done correctly means that not only do you impact your mojo by it coming out manifesting in different ways to communicate, it will be here after you're gone. That's how strong Mojo journalism can be. You can actually impose something, good or bad, and have it like stay there until an artifact breaks up. And artifacts tend to be designed out of like marble and shit, so it doesn't go away for a long, long time. Very powerful, but a lot of responsibility goes with that. So now we're starting going fast, these first 5. This is the last one of the biggies. Let me zoom, probably. Here is, you said language, right?
Language and oral tradition.
Yes. We're now going to start giving names to things. And again, this has been around for a long time, even these other things we're talking about, but there comes a point where it explodes to where language is able to express a wide variety of life over any other means. And this again is good and bad. This is where people started losing the ability to Mojo read. Words were a wonderful thing, but they also started replacing a lot of stuff. I don't look at Bob's face and read what he's saying to me. I listen to what he's saying to me. He's saying the eggs will be here on Friday. That's what he's saying. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not what his mojo is saying. That's what his words are saying. So this is a crucial change in the way humans did things. And again, like the artifacts, it's vital. It's a good thing. The power of it's amazing. It's heroic, but it must be done correctly. And it has not been done correctly for a few thousand years. So people start understanding how asleep humans are, realize that we started falling away from that pretty much when we started doing a lot of linguistics, to where linguistics held a weight of their own. There came to be a reliance of that over the other way we had done previously. So now we start moving fast. So those 5 things are in place now. Everything else kind of ramps off of that as humans get more ability to take what's in their psyche and put it out. And that's why you'll see a lot of things today, like the way computers are set up, interfacing, and so forth. They're basically, whether they know it or not, are emulating the human process. The way the way computers are put together instinctually is so much like the way the brain works. It's just ridiculous because you're trying to realize your own self, and we do AI. That's what we do too. We're basically trying to realize ourselves. What are we? So with the written word, now there's the ability to, this does add a new element to it. There is the ability to get much more specific and for it to stay there. So I guess the first 6 are very, very important as far as the things they bring into it. The written word allows for you to put things down, Nigel, you'll love this, in monologue form. You can do things in written word, even if it's laborious, say you're carving wood or whatever, but you can kind of go out in the woods and carve up a tree and just say some shit that's a one-way conversation. You mean so you start getting things like laws, books, basically, even though you have to carve that stuff up, there starts to become the concept of a big conversation, bigger than you have in normal interaction, but being able to put that into some sort of form. So now, for good or for bad, another big one, you have brainwashing. Artifacts have to some degree, but they're not so specific. It's mainly like a totem that means courage and falcons and whatever, and that's important. You should focus on that and focus on your inner falcon. That's good. But there's a lot of vagueness there. 20 big oak trees written from head to toe in like some sort of like symbol form. That's not vague. That's a way to live a life. That's important. That's like, a how-to manual. You basically start getting how-to manuals because you can write things that long and that specific. It started out often being like carvings and walls and big, big temples. But still, if you walked all around the temple in like an hour, you could basically read a book on how you're supposed to be, on how existence is, and what it all means. So this happened very, very early on in our lives, and so, in our development as far as being humans, and you're going to see that those last 6 is proven in archaeology, sociology, anthropology, etc. You can pretty much go to primates and get that. So more than likely, before the first cave drawings, before the first necklace we found of bones, we're probably doing that forever. When we're swinging trees, we're probably doing it because the ones we see now swinging trees do it. Okay. Now you see from there the scary how fast the trending went. From the invention of like oral tradition and verbal language and written language, it goes woo. Because when did that happen? A few thousand years ago? Not really. Even we had like written language. That's not that long ago as far as how long humans have been developing. And now look from there to where we're gonna go now. There's like just so many upgrades. Okay, so what you have here is the beginning of using memes as a way of battling. You had that with the laborious one, but generally, pretty much only the people who are in charge are going to be able to tell you to, go carve up 20 big trees or go carve up all the, marble in the quarry. So it tends to be, not only was it one-way conversations as far as like the topic, there wasn't competing conversations. Now you do see that. When there becomes the ability of, now it's mainly the intelligentsia, the various people that had this, but we start having like the ink and quill pen, even before then, or papyrus or whatever. But particularly when you get past that to where you actually have like the ability to write thoughts fairly quickly, relatively, compared to like carving and stuff, from when you had them. This is key. This is crucial. Now, as you understand this, that means anyone who does art will understand this. The idea that you had a big thought and you could, with ink and quill, or even primitive versions of that, you could write that down on paper the next day. This is key. This is the ability to capture large artistic and scientific things. Because when you have some big mathematical breakthrough or something, it's like, oh, what do you want to do? What does everyone do? Write that down, right? The first thing you want to do is go get a pad and pen and just scribble it all down before you lose it. With the ability at this stage, there's the ability to do that now. You can now capture big jumps. They're not lost anymore. That's good and bad. The good side is the good ones you get. The bad side is, again, it's kind of like, lawyers. You'd like it to be a good thing, but sometimes it just depends on who's using it for what reason, who has money. In this case, again, there has been a lot of bad journalism, haha, but like back from earliest times, bad journalism to where whoever had the ability, often was money and power, to have access. This brings a key point on how we see things and how we want everyone to have access to information and the ability to disseminate and express it. Is there has been, from the earliest of time, a control over journalism. Even here, it's getting more expanded now, which is good, but still usually you have to have a lot of money to do writing at this earliest phase. Okay, printing press brings in, truly, the pen is mightier than the sword. Now, one book, done laboriously, even though he wrote down one night, it's way better than it was the day before with carvings, but still, there is, it's sort of like a magic tune. And like that one book has power, and people can go mad from reading it. It says the world is round, oh my goodness. Okay, but it's just one book. One book that could be destroyed, like one master tape. Okay, printing press changed that. Printing press, although it was still not super fast, we'll get to more faster versions in a second here, but still, it is the idea of a template. Template makes you able to do spells. It is the ability for you to have thoughts, ideas, ways of doing things, and then putting into a book form, and if you have, again, the access to these special equipment, you could, boom, hundreds of them. That's power. Which is again why it tend to be controlled in the earliest days, because any political figures and even those earlier times will tell you that's scary. Because this is really getting the power of Mojo journalism. It's a way of affecting people, which governments tend to be very alarmed at, where your citizens change on you. Like, no one took your country over, no one invaded your borders, but you don't have the same citizens you had yesterday. Yesterday there wasn't Darwin's evolution of species, now there is, and now you got a bunch of atheists. In your country, it's the same, and that's very frightening. And when the printing press comes in, you see the real power of that, the ability to replicate it, the ability to get it out to that many people in one shot. Game changers. You're starting to see the game-changing ability of Mojo journalism. Mass production is when you start getting into now more modern times, when you kind of think of like, getting vaguely modern, where you actually had like newspapers. This is similar to the quill and pen for the individual, where you had a good idea or something important to say, and once you were able to, you could just go and write it down. But from there to getting a lot of people having it, that took some step, but then it could explode. So it's kind of a 1-2. Not once you had like professional newspapers. Even the earliest ones, that from its early stage has been about turning things around. The ability to get a story, and then basically a reporter comes in, much like the person who wrote things down in pen and quill, except when they write it down, right then it goes into a mass production and it comes out in that printing press form instantly, the next day. So it's printing press, one-day delivery. So this basically bonus stacks was already frightening in that the printing press could take one template and make many, This means it can happen like that, so this gets extra frightening. Not only can this explode like a virus of enlightenment, it can happen overnight. That's really, really, really frightening. But it's a good thing because, and this is why we have to have it, the ability for people to know what's going on. For example, the amount of artistic, scientific, humanistic breakthroughs of all kinds, just wonderful things, information, just general stuff. You have people who are working on it in this country and they could have had a bigger breakthrough, but they spent, a large period of time not realizing that relevant things had been happening one village down, next country over, around the world. When you start having this, you start having to pretty much major towns and major cities, big things that happened, it's known next day. Next day, the major items, if a major breakthrough happened, if a major crime happened, people know that relatively quickly. This is changing things. Mojo journalism and journalism in general changes how the tribe does things and how governance happens. Because now you have a populace that wants to know things. They want to know what you're going to do about such and such. You know why? They heard about it yesterday. Normally you had weeks and weeks to kind of like play with that or keep people in the dark. Now you don't. And so, Mojo journalism and politics are very much intertwined because politics are always trying to kind of get around journalism. Journalism is always trying to hold politics accountable. So they work hand in hand there, whether they want to or not. Okay, so photos add in a new element. For example, in the Civil War, this is well known, is that humans are hit by mojo through distance. So, for example, this is well known, I don't want to be too harsh, but it's true. Humans get hit by the stress of another human in pain. But there comes a distance of that sound to your central nervous system that it has less impact. So if you hear a cry faintly far away, it literally moves you less. Okay, this happens with any expression. So when you're expressing currently, even with newspapers, it's mainly being done through words. Words do not have the full impact of the psyche. The psyche, you talk about left brain, right brain, there's a lot of visual impact. That impact had not been felt. It's been mainly just text because it's much easier. So now, like in the Civil War, photographs became reliable enough and fast enough and good enough that that was a war that was recorded. Mainly the tail end of it, but the carnage, actually seeing the bodies and so forth, this horrified people. It did. It forever changed the way people thought about war. Because it's one thing talking about, oh, there are bodies everywhere, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a cool action movie until you see it. Do you want to fucking vomit? That's different. And so that dramatically changed people. It also changed, even though people had lost greatly their ability to mojo read, they had lost entirely, politics changed. Not just seeing obviously carnage, that thing, but also ugliness of spirit. If it was grotesque, you couldn't have that anymore. You had to at least look vaguely like you were not an asshole. Because if you looked like you were stupid or evil or any of those things, the camera would capture you. The ability to have yourself with your hand in the cookie jar. You can literally be seen killing someone, seen having an affair, recorded taking money out of the till. This again dramatically changes things because just like everything else in natural law, wasn't that always happening? Yes, but there was no record of it. Much like Mojo now, they were bringing out. It's always been happening, but there's no record of it. Mojo journalism increasing now pictures what there is a record of. Going back to the cave drawings, the tools, it was a record of your being. That record's getting way more precise. It's starting to frighten people. And I want to put Mojo journalism in this context that although people at first did not like, people hated photographs. They thought their soul would be taken. We're not even talking about like primitive cultures. We're talking about like normal, like Americans didn't like being photographed. They didn't like it. Probably because they had a lot of ugliness they've been avoiding. Fact of the matter is, we needed that. I don't think any of us want to go back to when we didn't have photographs. I don't want that. So It's important to take these steps because Mojo Journalism is going to freak people out by how much it's going to show about ourselves. But we've always been moving this direction and it's always been the right thing to do, although it has not always been used appropriately. Okay, so you now start getting the idea of there's a race. I kind of implied before that the official newspapers bring things out the next day or so forth, but now you started getting it to where there's going to be 2 a day. There's a morning edition, there's a night edition. There are multiple newspapers. There are going to be several newspapers covering a story. So when this happens, it's beginning to get to be like a global consciousness dialogue. It's slow, but you basically you put information out in the morning, you get a reaction during the day with new information, and you put out another story at night. This is getting to where it's kind of like you talk back and forth. What you consider like nowadays, we talk about like people talk about how it's getting so much like this. It's always moving this way to where companies need to be more like family with their customers. The reason is because as the journalism allowed for more increased interaction, humans want that. If they can get that information, they want it. And so it's good because it makes the information flow faster. When the information flows faster, it tends to flow, ironically, people think it flows more not true. Actually, to a large degree, especially this time, it's flowing more true. The more time you had to think about a story sometimes, the more they might flub it, particularly back in the early days. There was a lot of corruption and different powers that be were getting involved that shouldn't. There is more accountability from the public to the producers of the journalism. And that's a good thing. It also, from those journalists, there is, again, the governance issue, because when a voice is expected to speak and you remove that voice, there's going to be a hubbub. When that voice is scheduled to speak maybe only every few days and the edition comes out, or once a weekly edition a lot of times, but no, the people are expecting a voice like morning and night at least, and 10 different papers doing it. You come in and start shutting down those papers, people notice it. There's a constant flood of information and they expect that information. If it goes away, there's going to be a problem. That's good and proper. Again, not all those journalist outlets were doing the best thing or getting the best information, but that principle is a good one to have, and governances that don't allow for that suck. Okay, I hope we all being Americans at least can go with that one. I mean, I have issues with a lot of the way the American government runs certain things, but that much I really like. I like freedom of the press. I like the ability to hold government accountable through information. That is the first liberty being taken away from a human, because power has a lot to do with that, with your personal story being taken away from you. That's one of the first things that a bubble can do incorrectly, and you must not let that happen. Telegraph. So now, what we're talking about before is mainly happening, as mentioned, in the major cities, and how quickly that life turns over, new stories happen, people react, yada yada. With a telegraph, there's the ability for major stories to travel the whole length of a country. So now, big stories in New York, you know about in LA. So there is you see increase now, the turnaround time that is now possible in the cities is now getting possible from city to city. So now like the story go from one person and then boom, that newspaper, the city turns up the next day. A few hours later or a day later, that story can break all over the country if it's important enough. Again, you're seeing the spell-like quality of a good story. A good story can hit everyone if it's good enough. So, really cool. Radio is a big one. Radio is similar to the photograph in that it brought in, just like manifestation cues, there's a lot of vocal cues. So humans now are getting a new part of Mojo. It's always been there, But when it came to Mojo Journalism, there is the ability to get text, then there was the ability to get photos, and now, I mean, people were obviously talking all this time, but there's the ability to transmit that. Two things, like all this. A, there's a truth in that, because you're just conveying mojo, but it's a new conduit, there's new information there. For example, if people are being bad, or they're doing things they shouldn't, or if they have a really good soul, how do you know these things? You can hear it. You can hear it, and so people start to get some of their mojo journalism back, actually. I think mojo journalism, or mojo reading, was probably at its weakest during the period where there was a lot of journalism with slow turnaround and no audio-visual media. That's probably when we were at our dark ages. We're actually coming out of that, which is good, and start to think with photographs and then going towards like the telegraph and particularly the radio, is when people were listening on radio to the people talking on it, they were straining their ears. What? Does he sound like a good leader? Does she sound honest? And so that's mojo reading, so it's introducing that back into the diet, which is a good thing. Phones. Phones introduce another key element, which is the individuality increasing. So before there was journalism, but you're noticing that there's a lot of money involved with it, say early on, like royalty, and then later on still, it's like organizations that are outlets for media. The phone is the beginning, moving towards a lot where we are now, where it took journalism out of the hands of the big journalistic outlets. Because before, the fastest way to get a story was to basically hear what came on the newspaper or through the telegraph. But now it's not. You could actually have a story break in a given city, and if a citizen there knows you, they can actually tell you much faster and better. They call you right then, it's your friend, they give the inside skinny from a friend's point of view. This changes journalism dramatically. It changes the way professional journalism have to act, because people now can get good stories from friends. You're going to have to outdo that. That's now the bar. So now you pretty much introduce a really heavy element of Mojo journalism, which is that a friend that you know, not unlike people pool training, you know them and they are conveying a story to you, and you know Fred, and Fred is such and such kind of guy, and I have this history with them, and that person is telling me this story. That's most journalism right there, which is really kind of cool. And again, that took power out of the overall big hands and gave it to everyone, because now you really start seeing that almost anyone can be a Mojo reporter. Because it gives you the ability to pretty much, within walking distance of your home in town, you are a reporter. You can walk around your town, come back to your home, and call the police, call the newspaper. So basically, telephones made everyone roving reporters. Everyone at a telephone is technically, at that point on, a roving reporter, because anything they see or encounter, they can actually phone it in and get a good chunk of civilization to know about it, bam, like that. TV is more of a, again, centralized, big budget kind of outlet at first, but it does bring in, like the radio and the photograph, more of the person. And again, like I mentioned before, like some famous debates, it was Nixon was one of them, where he didn't, one of them anyway, my memory's horrible, sorry. But it's well known that political debate changed after that, because you can debate in books, and if you have strong command of words and facts and arguments, you can convey yourself very well, and you may be able to hide through editing various things anything negative about your character. Photographs you can pose for, especially if you only accept through certain photographs. But TV, and this gets into Mojo reading, that's a lot of footage. And if you guys know anything about Mojo reading, you'll know that like certain photos can be throw you off, particularly one people who are like professional posers. But if you get like 2 minutes of video, it's really hard to, if you have issues, to keep from leaking that you have some sort of not great development of energy for like 2 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. It gets very, very hard to do that. And so that forever changed the political and the journalistic landscape for the better. Because, now here's where it gets issue, because I do consider most people a lot of times to be stupid and they're not educated as they should be. It's good that humans have the ability, random humans who have TVs, to now, this is good, rate their leaders. They can look at their leader and go, I don't know, what do you think about that? Because he's literally, or she is literally across from you as if they're at a bar. Because if you put their head like that, basically it's like they're kind of right there. So you can kind of like think, what do you think about them? You know, kind of talk like a new guy at work. What do you think, Stan? Do you like the new guy, Bob? What do you think about him? That's a very comfortable, intimate way to be talking about someone you don't really know. That's a good thing. Because if that person affects your life, you should get to know them like that. You should get to see them that much. If they're in charge of, like, you know, your politics and the decisions that affect, you know, how you live your life. But the bad part is most people aren't good enough at reading people to actually know what they're looking at. So there can be, unfortunately, a lot of bad judgments that came off of that because you're dealing with a populace that really has lost touch with the Mojo reading ability for thousands of years. And now they're given basically the ability to Mojo read people on TV now and see if they like them or don't like them, and, you know, think well of their opinions or not. So again, awesome, but yeah, do it right. Okay, digital media is, I think, very relevant probably to initial language and photographs, in that it captures reality. It captures reality so that it's there forever afterwards. And digital media got to where the fudge factor was gone. With the earlier photos and earlier media, it was off enough, it would degrade enough that you could wiggle with it. Digital media kind of brought in a DNA forensics to things. When you have something in such rich detail that you can actually zoom into it really much and still in rich detail, that changes things. That brings a lot of things to light that before were hidden. For example, what's the person's hands doing? Well, maybe the photo was too blurry or even was good at one side, you couldn't zoom in. Now you can. You can zoom in on everything. You can see what people are doing with their shirts, what stains there are. That is reality. It was always there, but now we're seeing it and we can transfer it to each other. We can actually say, hey Bob, look what I saw so-and-so doing. Look at that silly tie they wore. Look at the president, his fly was open. Whatever. It also is small. Super rich and dense and clear at forensic level, but it also became relatively small. Old photographs are a big hassle to like make them and hold them and yada yada. Even early digital, early floppy disks brought in the idea that you could have like tons of stuff on a little thing. I could have a bunch of books on a disk. I could actually have every photo ever taken of a given person in one disk. There is the ability, therefore, to know a being who you've never met through a lot of information. This is new. Kind of the ability to geek out. Digital media brought in the idea that, like, I could actually get like 1,000 pictures on the new Ferrari. I mean, even back in the early day of digital media, I mean, there's still that ability to like art and saving things that happen in life as art, because the more beautiful things are to look at and to be rendered, the more you're going to pay attention to them. And just like any kind of case solving, the more angles you look at, the more you see. So for example, like nowadays, you go and click on the internet for pictures, you get gazillions of them. And you can paint a better picture of a person. It's not perfect. The more you have. The more pictures, the more video, the more books they've written, the more articles written about them, you can make a greater composite. Now, could that composite be bullshit? Yes. And that's where the good part and the bad part, again, comes in, because that's a great tool, but it could be really off. Desktops basically increases the ability for you to be a roving reporter. You're basically a secret agent in your lab now. A basic CPU can do phenomenal things, things that used to be done by like entire media outlets. Not long ago, what a CPU can do was done by a whole news organization. That's pretty incredible. Internet is sort of like the telegraph, but ramped up. It's the ability to basically make a connection anywhere in the world, but now you can do it not just through talking, the telephone, or radio. You can transfer the digital media. So now, like, when I have it, I can accumulate lots of digital media, and I can just pipeline it over there, or I can put it up on a site and have, this is key, a virtual media outlet, a virtual mall of information. That's very cool. Cyberspace. Cyberspace is basically when the internet became built up enough that they became communities on their own. People would, for various reasons, stay on the web or parts of the web, communities, for their whole life. There became web culture. And web culture is a reflection of our culture, and that is Mojo Journalism. So cyberspace is a very interesting way of seeing Mojo Journalism, because there's a lot of impingements with other journalism, so you're kind of seeing more of what people want to be doing and where their minds and thoughts want to go as far as research and whatnot. It's not like the Wild West. Handhelds ramps up what the telephones gave to a large degree, in that anyone walking around, now they don't have to go back to their house. Anywhere they walk, they have it on them. They're walking around with the ability to be a very good reporter just by being a human being, just by having an instrument that they know how to use through normal. They don't have to be a pro. Like, they know how to write text messages, they know how to take pictures and send them to their friends. So they basically are already doing that anyway. It'd be very easy to do that on a breaking story. Facebook is an official, almost heraldry system for how to introduce yourself. It's very Mojo Journalism, actually, is people understanding that since the internet has now become a intangible global village, you need to be able to express yourself, to have a coming out, to say who you are, to have clubs. Not tangible clubs, but intangible clubs. That, of course, can relate to tangible clubs as well. So this is socializing and networking at its finest in a lot of ways, and so that's another form of Mojo Journalism. It can be abused, but the upside is it allows for you to not be lost in the sea of information, but to actually make a home for yourself, so you can stand out and actually get the interaction that you want. That's the whole goal of Mojo Journalism, is to express yourself in a good way and also to receive from the environment what you need. And the more of a disconnect there is, the more will be lost. That takes away another disconnect. Twitter, really fast, is that it turns around very, very quickly, so you're starting to talk about media going about as fast as conversation goes. I think Skype's next. Goes really fast here. Is the last one?
Yeah, that's
good. Skype is getting to where it's people are not in the room with you. They're in other countries, other cities, and it's like they're in the next room with you. And it's getting faster and faster. Pretty soon, talking to anyone, anywhere in the world, as if they're in the room with you, will be normal. This will again change Mojo Journalism and make Mojo reading more relevant than ever. There's obvious careers as well, like professional careers, such as being a Mojo writer, because you can write stories from that point of view and knowing what's going on there, and social alchemy, explain to people, and of course being a mediaist, knowing how to do pictures and Photoshop and things of that nature, but being aware of Mojo and cues and whatnot, and being an editor and all those kind of things, all kind of like the traditional journalistic roles, but with a media influence. Okay, so those are like professional, like standard, like you think as like journalism, but pretty much anything where you're expressing yourself, say through art, through scientists making discoveries, putting out things in textbooks, all those things are journalism, Mojo Journalism, where you are expressing things from yourself to other people so they can have it as well. Well, yes, you have to be, because with Mojo Journalism from the beginning is the more you are doing it correctly, you are expressing truth. Truth takes bravery, so you'll have to be a heroic pioneer, because otherwise you'll be one of those people or governments that fears new information coming in, and you cannot live in fear. You have to be brave. So if you want to be a heroic pioneer and actually see those news stories that come in each day and actually realize your world is changing and you have to know that and do something about that, well, you're taking ownership of the fact that you are living in a world that's changing, and you're going to be a pioneer of that. You're not going to go, oh, no, no. You're going to say, what's going on? What's the story? I know what the story is, so I can do a really good heroic job. I can jump into it, be a character, be a player character, not an NPC who's not in the know.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Yay.